Uh, Fellow Amazonians, good morning, good afternoon, good evening across the globe. Uh, I'm joined today by my learned friend, colleague, uh, soldier in arms, by the chairman of Economic Council for AGOC. I'm joined by him today. The essence of this video, as we've been doing in the past, is to continue to educate our people. Knowledge is very important. As a people, we need to be educated because we don't live as a silo. We need to look at what is happening globally, see how it pertains to our situation, and also figure out what we can learn from other people in helping our case, in helping to really bring our case to a closure as far as the independence of our country is concerned. So I am really privileged to have my friend, colleague with me to look at what has happened across the globe since both of us last went on air, and see how, because everything that happens affects Amazonia in one form or the other. But first of all, we need to continue to educate our people. We need to constantly educate our people and make sure that they stay informed, because whatever happens from a global perspective can shape our mindset on how we approach our quest for liberation. So my able friend and colleague, you are welcome. And I want to thank you also for taking your time, your precious time out for us to sit and talk about things happening in our continent and also happening globally, so as to see how we can match that with what is currently happening in Amazonia. Thanks for for taking your time. Let's have this conversation.
Fellow comrade, I equally want to thank you once again for the opportunity to be on this platform. It is testament to the work that you do. I'm pleased that each time we're able to get together and have this conversation to continue to educate our people, to keep them abreast with what is happening in their environment, so that way they can continue to make decisions that are informed. I am very excited for the wealth of knowledge that you personally have, that you constantly come up here on this platform and provide that education to our people. In that format, I'm here today and looking forward to the presentation that we have, and hoping that they would continue to help our people, guide them and drive them towards the right path. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, comrade. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Like we said, and we have tried always to educate our people, because one thing is very certain: the world is a global village, as they call it. And what happens in the north, south, east, west does affect us as a people, Amazonians as a people. And there are lessons to be learned, because nation building is not just like, okay, when you attain independence, how do you shape your policies? How do you address aspects in your country? How do you connect with what you are doing and also relate it globally? So that's why we take this time to discuss on issues happening globally, to continue to educate our people, because they always say that knowledge is power. We talk about Amazonia, we talk about the world, because it is interrelated. They are interrelated. Amazonia and the world are interrelated. So we'll touch on a couple of things. It is not just about the revolution that we're going to discuss on. We're also going to talk about things that are happening globally to continue to awaken the consciousness of our people. we have a couple of topics that we want to discuss on. And, some will relate directly to Amazonian quest for independence. Some will relate to global issues, global affairs. We'll try to look at what has been put out there. We'll analyze it and see how it affects not only us as Amazonians, how it affects us as a race of people. Recently, comrade, let me start from this very first incident that we are still struggling, we are still trying to put our arms around it. We saw recently that the president of Russia, President Putin, Vladimir Putin, he came out to the world and said that he will have to put the actual image that depicts whom Christ was, his disciples were, his apostles were. And he said the truth has been hidden for too long. They are going to go with what was in place and what they adopted. A lot of people were coming up with various, theories in mind or rationale as to why the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, will bring up such a topic in the midst of a war that they are fighting. There were other school of thoughts that he is trying to buy Africans into his war. He is trying to, undermine the Westerners. So when you saw him putting out that, let me ask you from your own perspective, when you analyze that imagery and what he put out there and the speech he made, what can you make out of that? What do you think was the perception? What was his rationale behind it? Just from your own thought process, what do you think about that?
I think this was, comrade, thank you for that question. I think this is an important question for all of us, not only from a Pan-African perspective, but also from individual perspective as Amazonian citizens. I think this was really major, and the fact that he came and addressed, he did not just put it in the press, he came and addressed the nation, presenting to the nation that this is a fact, tells us that he took this very, very seriously. There has been a concerted effort. If we look at a historical civilizational perspective, Africa as a whole had a civilization that had driven the world, especially from if you remember, at some point Africa was actually called Kemet. The civilization in Egypt, in the Sahel region, that went on to provide a lot of the basis for which the humanity improved its quality of life. So there had been a recognition that if Africans were allowed to continue to function that way, they will at some point lead the world. And with that recognition, there has been a subjected or concerted effort to make sure that they did not allow Africans or even blacks, because if you look at the way that America has kept its black people, making sure that they did not make any progress in the society. Now, Putin comes out. Putin and the Chinese, especially, they have a strategy where they are looking long term into the future, where they understand that in order for them to grow and still continue to align with European states, the American states, and the West in its totality, will still continue to hinder their growth. So one aspect of that is that Putin is looking for new markets, looking for new associations. And there has recently in Russia been a concerted effort towards even pushing languages like Swahili to be taught in schools. There's a video out there that you can actually see Russian students, because they recognize that the entire language of Swahili is spoken all the way in the East African area. That would become in future a major language. So by coming out and recognizing and putting out the fact that it is a fact that Jesus Christ, who, if you remember, when his parents had trouble in Israel, he was sent in Egypt. You don't send a light colored skin guy to be hidden in a place where most of the people are not. So basically, to be hidden in Egypt, where he would survive the wrath of Herod. So by recognizing that, he continued to give the opportunity to Africa, that Russia recognizes you, and you are part of the growth of the strategy that we're putting in place for long term as a future. Um, China can no longer continue to look at to look at the West for its. China has 1.4 billion people, and they know that for us to be able to support the growth that we've gone through in the last maybe 2-3 decades, we have to expand our markets. Africa provides with 1.3 billion and the opportunity for infrastructure growth, the opportunity for all the things that Africa can grow towards. Africa provide that market. So the bigger strategy is to create that friendship towards which we can both operate as partners, including even the BRICS countries and China and Russia operating as the foundation, as a pivot for that growth, would therefore provide the condition for which all of these countries can then operate as a single entity outside of the West. So that is the way I would generally look at that.
You know, that is an angle that you look at it. The timing and how the world is moving is an angle that you can look at it from that perspective.
Right. Right.
I look at it from another perspective. It's like taking one stone to shoot multiple birds. It comes at a time, people might feel that Russia, some people think that Russia is finding it difficult to win this war. No, Russia is winning. And if people are thinking that Russia has put out a messaging because they want to buy the favors of the global south, including Africa, that is a big mistake. Then they're not following the actual happenings in the Ukraine war. Because I think not long from now, Ukrainians will capitulate. So it's not a sign of desperation for him to do that. You bring in the point of fear, trying to interconnect Africa deeper with the Russian people. He sees into the future. The future is, we can put it this way. The future is, Africa is the future. The more you start aligning with Africa, the better for you. That is one phase that I can look at it from that perspective. But there's another spiritual context of what happened. So now, if you look at the images of Jesus, his disciples, his apostles, and all what he revealed, couple what is the happenings in the Middle East, it begs the question, who are the Jews? That is how I look at it. If Jesus and his disciples and everybody were Jews, and there's trouble in Israel, or that piece of land about who that is owned by some people. So who, and if they are claiming that the land was owned by the Jews. So him throwing this out there from the spiritual context is like opening up the can of worms. Who are the ones fighting on that land? And if they claim to be a particular set of people, then what I'm putting out there is what those people were. And those are the people that, if they are claiming to be of that particular lineage, those are the ones that are supposed to be fighting there. You get it? That is
absolutely.
Yes, because that now it totally, it unsettles the whole situation there. Who are the ones fighting there? Who are you claiming to be? If these were the people who had that particular lineage, who had that particular spirituality, the culture, and everything, practicing the Hebrew faith, and these are the ones that were painted and depicted. So you claiming it, how are you interconnected to these people? You get it? The messaging comes in from a multiple perspective.
Multiple perspective.
Yes, besides the economic, political, and strategic purpose, angle, there's also a spiritual perspective of it.
Indeed.
Because, with the happenings in the Middle East, it throws that out to the wall at that material moment. It begs the question. Let's go back to the drawing board. From a historical context, the people that are laying claim, are they these ones that we know that existed in that piece of land?
See, you can argue that there is no separation between Israel, the Jewish state, and the Jews, and then the United States and the West as a whole. They are the ones that have ganged up to support Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that context, there's been the refusal of the West to negotiate with Russia, and the continuous supply of weapons that are now being, technically running out.
Mm-hmm.
Supply of weapons and the push of Ukrainians to confront Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Very recently, there was a vote on the Ukrainian parliament that, if you remember, the Ukrainian parliament has about 400 parliamentarians. Just about 45 of them were present to vote to reduce the age limit to allow for 18-year-olds and all the way 25-year-olds to now be sent to battle. This is a war, like you earlier said, that cannot be won. Now, the reason I bring that up too is to connect to what you're just saying, that because of that refusal to the West, Russia had recognized that the gloves were off. This was a time to put everything into perspective.
Yeah.
And they go on to release that data to equally to go against the West, that you form the foundation of your war in the Middle East, that the basis of, a research work was done in which it was proven that 98% of the people that are claiming that they are Jews have their DNA ancestry all linked to Europeans and Americans, not even to people of the Middle East. And that Palestinians were actually more closely linked. About 95% of them were closely linked to the region in terms of their DNA outcome. So Russia, by putting out all this information too, like you said, there was a religious perspective to it. And a lot of the support that goes to Israel comes from the religious right. In the US, was equally to kind of send a message that if you're supporting Israel because of the whole issue of Christianity, know that Jesus Christ was equally, technically descended from sub-Saharan African people.
Yes. Yeah. And the one thing that bogs my imagination in that discussion, we keep on talking. You've not heard the Vatican
say anything about it, because they know what the truth is. They should go to that Vatican vault.
Yes,
that is beneath
beneath the Vatican.
Beneath the Vatican, and unveil it and let us see what is there. Because a lot of those images, we are told history, actually the true history reveals to us that it was one of the popes that asked this painter to redraw or rewrite
Leonardo da
Vinci to recreate those images to fit the son of the king at the time. So basically, the images were redrawn to paint away the actual true images. So I think the fact that the Catholic Church hasn't come up, or the Vatican hasn't come up to say anything, they recognize it.
Yeah. And if they stand for the truth as a claim, they should be correcting all those things globally. They should be correcting it. That is one thing that we have not yet seen from the Vatican. They have not yet made a statement, a religious body of that nature. They have not rebuked it. They have not debunked it. They are silent. And that's one of the tools that they have always used. Plausible, just stay quiet is some sort of, how do you call it, benign neglect. you neglect something, you don't touch it, because you know very well that the foundation that you built that particular institution on was on lies. You sold it out globally, subjugated other indigenous people globally, and now when the truth comes out, instead of you, if you really believe and meant what you went out to preach globally, you should be coming out and correcting it and telling people the truth for what it is. You know, so that is something that we have to look into that context. I know we touched. I said we'll be touching on other topics as we go along and analyzing them. Now, I know one of your favorite parts in our discussions, and I can call it the hope for Africa, the hope for the Black race. I want to touch on the Sahel Confederacy. So the last time you and I spoke, a couple of things have happened in that area, from the security perspective to the economic perspective. And the progress that they are making, and security, economy, and the progress that they are making. So what can you say? What lessons can we learn from the AES as Ambazonians, and how, we also as a race of people, what are the learnings that we can really gather from what is currently happening in the three AES confederacy?
You know, it is interesting how connected where we started with this religious perspective, how connected it is equally to the AES. For those that are not familiar, when we use the word AES, we're referring to the Association of the States of Sahel, that is made up of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. So the connectedness too comes in where the Ukrainian war has exposed a lot. If you notice, just very recently, France was talking about sending troops to Ukraine, and of which Russia warned against the fact that if they do, they will be considered as enemy combatants.
Yeah.
So long as they're existing on the Ukrainian territory, they will not be considered as NATO forces. So one thing that the reason for which France is doing all of that, or one of the reasons for which France was doing all of that, is the fact that Russia has asserted a lot of influence in the areas that were previously under the influence of the French, or the territorial influence of the French.
Yeah.
So because of that, France has gone out to try to find ways in which to criticize Russia or to pay back to Russia, but unfortunately, their options are generally very limited. The one thing that I liked about this whole arrangement too is the fact that, and which goes to that religious connection, is equally how much Russia is putting its actions where its mouth is when they've said it. Very recently, they put in defense structures in Niger, and most of the AES area now have air defense architecture, which is now in place to make sure that the entire territory is defended from attacks from the air. Okay. And in those arrangements, they know that by having these countries all operate as a single entity, they stand the chances of defending against a foreign invasion, including ECOWAS, that the West was trying to use to do their dirty work in Niger not so long ago, before they realized that there was no willingness for Africans to continue to fight against Africans on the one hand, or there was no power, military might that these other countries had that they could use to invade the AES territory.
Yeah.
So this AES arrangement basically has helped to strengthen this country. I would point out that very recently, previously, let's look at what was previously happening. Previously, all of these French companies, all of these Western companies that are located in sub-Saharan Africa were not paying taxes.
Yeah.
They had argued that there was some kind of a dual taxation policy. So that is to say that these countries already pay taxes in their countries, like say France, Germany, and all of that, so they can pay taxes again in the sub-Saharan African region. So basically, they are taking all of African resources and not doing and extracting those resources, making money out of it, and then at the same time not paying taxes, selling these resources for cheap. So one of the things that happened with Niger very recently is after Niger insisted on all these countries to pay taxes, they raised just within, 400 million US dollars. That tells you just how much they were losing in terms of all of this. So the companies are now paying taxes 400 million US dollars.
Wow.
Imagine how much that will go into the creation, to the building of roads, building of schools. This is a country that was classified as one of the lowest in terms of poverty by the United Nations just about 2 years ago. And look at what they're able to raise. This is just from taxes. Now, imagine them being able to sell their actual resources that are coming in, because now they're building industry, especially this is happening in Mali and Burkina Faso, building primary industry that would be able to extract the primary resources, convert them on the soil without shipping raw materials that are converted and then sold to them, but will convert these raw materials into almost finished goods, then and those add value to it. Thank you. That value add process would then create jobs that will employ a lot of the citizens of these territories. And so we are very excited for what is going on now. And with that policy or that structure, including the fact that Russia and China came together very equally very recently and stated that any attacks on countries that will jeopardize the security of the business world and also peace that impact the international community, they will have to enter and intervene. So by doing that, it will allow some of these countries to then be able to make some progress economically and help their people, and create an environment where the Chinese therefore can now sell their goods besides just selling them to the West. And because if I have a job and I'm located in the Sahel region, I now have the financial capacity to be able to buy goods that are coming in from whether Russia or China. Meanwhile, previously the focus good quality, exactly. Meanwhile, previously, because a lot of people don't really recognize the fact that Chinese products are of really good quality. The fact that they send those that are not of good quality to countries that imagine that you make $2 a day or $1 a day. Basically, you would get the kinds of goods that your level of income can afford, and those would be those that are shipped to you. So, but if you are a country that has $65,000 a year, then basically you get those quality of goods too, therefore that you can afford. So by growing the economy, creating jobs, improving on the purchasing power of these countries, they will be able to afford to purchase those goods. So I end here, comrade, for you to.
Thanks, comrade. You nailed a very good point on China. China makes all grades of products, all quality grade of products. 90% of core products in the West is made by China. China is the manufacturing hub globally. So at times, if you want this particular material for a small price, China will produce it for you. If you want a higher quality, they'll give you. What you want. So that notion that they used to use as some sort of a smear campaign on China, that China makes only poor quality good. No, you pay for you get what you pay for. In the US, more of the top quality things here are made from China.
Right.
Quality things, but that same thing you will still see it in. I mean, it has a low grade. If you want a low grade, they'll provide it to you. If you want a high quality, they'll provide it to you. So that notion that things from China is no. That's the mindset that they had when they started indoctrinating us about. China has the capability of producing every quality of what you want. That's the biggest.
And not only that, the fact that it might even be cheaper doesn't mean it's poor quality. Look at Huawei. I know we're not talking about China yet, but look at Huawei. This was a company that will compete in terms of their phone with iPhones.
Yeah.
But today, the Chinese used to believe that by buying the iPhone that was better quality, but today they've moved towards purchasing Huawei because Huawei is now producing phones that are faster and cheaper.
Yes.
Cheaper, right? High quality, and not just phones. They're doing it in every aspect of communication and technology. They've deployed 5Gs. About 2-3 years ago, because under the Trump administration, when I say we, the United States couldn't compete very much in the 5G. They went on and twisted Huawei's arm. The daughter of the founder of Huawei was in Canada to do a presentation. They requested the Canadian government to arrest that daughter of the Huawei founder in order to pressure her or to pressure the company Huawei to provide their 5G technology, which obviously they refused to do because that was a very competitive edge. So that is just to say that they are producing these things because they've set up processes that allows them to produce goods even for cheaper and better better quality.
Yeah. So you still we're talking about people who leave Sahel. There's something that we need to learn from them. And I would say that and see related to Ambazonia. Look, they know that working together will fend off all the external enemies as a people. That should be a lesson for us Ambazonians to see, go back and understand. ECOWAS could not come in because they saw one major big force. If Ambazonian fighters can understand that they need to work together like one, they'll be able to push out like Republic of Cameroon within a very short time. The Republic of Cameroon has exploited the opportunity, the fact that their biggest energy and effort has been to split the forces. When we are divided, we can't focus our attention on the Republic of Cameroon. I can say technically, logically, the ADF is one of those fighting forces that focuses on laser focus on the enemy.
Laser focus on the enemy.
Yes. Why they have diverted the other ones, diluted the internal politics, they are now focusing on fighting other fighters.
Including the ADF.
Yes, fighting ADF. So others have tapped out and they're doing that. So that has been so those who are still in the field, you have to understand the importance of working together like one power, like one people. Look at what is happening in the Sahel forces. Nobody can come in. They are also requesting for heavy technology, sophisticated technology. They have drones. They can pick out all the terrorists. They have been flushing them out continuously. And we had this conversation, and you talked about, just from a general perspective, one of the ways that they have always used in subjugating us is coming in, balkanizing you, breaking you to pieces so that they can easily extract and manage your resources. Meanwhile, on the European end, they are forming the EU, coming together as one big bloc, working extremely hard to break other parts of the world so they can easily control and contain them. So speaking about that, you were saying that something was about to happen in Mali before Assimi Goïta took upon himself. Yeah, can you expand on that?
Right. So you make a good point too with the issue of Ambazonia, where we have a lot to learn from the AES region. If there's been a significant concerted effort towards putting out sending individuals out there for propaganda purposes against the Ambazonian Defense Forces in order to weaken their resolve. It all probably got into high gear when the liberation tax was put in place.
Yep. Yeah.
La République du Cameroon started to recognize the strength of the liberation tax and what its capacity and what it could do for the Ambazonian Defense Forces.
Yeah.
And so what it did was it knew it couldn't compete on mano to mano on the ground fighting the Ambazonian Defense Forces. So then it released its destabilization forces, which in this case is its propaganda arm, using Ambazonians to go out there and
smear the whole campaign for the liberation tax. Dirty.
dirty the Ambazonian Governing Council, and by dirtying the Ambazonian Governing Council, then they thought that with that strategy, then they can reduce the number of people that make contributions to the liberation tax. That has not worked. That is not going to work. The Ambazonian Governing Council and the Ambazonian Defense Forces continue to be very resolved. Ambazonians continue to make their liberation tax payments to the Ambazonian Governing Council, which will continue because they recognize the fact that the path to independence continues to lie in the hands of the Ambazonian Governing Council. No matter what they've done for the Ambazonian Defense Forces since 2016, the Ambazonian Defense Forces are still standing. Without them, there is no liberation. Sure. Without them, the fight does not go on. Without them, La République du Cameroon will coerce the rest of everybody else that is still around the corner, and our struggle for independence will be an end. So I am very excited to know that the Ambazonians continue to make their payments for the liberation tax both at home and abroad, because they see what the Ambazonian Defense Forces are doing as the primary strategy and the pivot, the strength that will continue to drive this fight ahead. Now, going back to the question you just asked about the AES and
Mali
and Mali. Initially, thank you. Initially, Assimi Goïta, who is now the president of Mali, he was a special force officer that was commanding the forces that were going into the northern part of Mali and northeastern part of Mali, that is known as the Zawad region. They were going towards Gao. Gao is one of the bigger city in the northern part of Mali. At that point, they were stopped by the French, that they couldn't go because they know that a lot of the terrorist forces that were under the French tutelage were located there in Gao, but by defeating them, basically they would have knocked out a blow on these terrorist forces. So they were stopped by the French forces. Now, the French had been pushing towards dividing Mali, divide and conquer, obviously, like we talked about, has been pushing towards dividing Mali with the southern side of Mali and the Zawad region. Meanwhile, they stated that the Zawad people were looking towards getting out of Mali. Meanwhile, the truth of the matter was that in the Zawad region, that is where a lot of the resources like the oil, the gold, and the bauxite of most of the natural resources of Mali are located, that have been discovered, are located. So by splitting Mali, it would have been easy to control the various regions. Same thing they did to Sudan, South Sudan, and North Sudan. Same thing they've been trying to do to Ukraine. So it's just been their strategy: divide and conquer, divide and rule. So, and they have created these little organizations like the ECOWAS, having an influence in these organizations to use them as the backdrop towards pushing for some of these policies. If you look at, there was a Guinea-Bissau, where the president of Guinea-Bissau had refused them entry towards exploration of oil and stuff like that. He won the elections that year. They claim he did not win. They invoke the ECOWAS forces.
Oh, you talk about Gambia.
Gambia. Thank you. Gambia. That's the guy. Thanks for that correction. It was Gambia. Yaya Jammeh refused at the last moment that he was not going to leave. They used the ECOWAS forces and threatened him using Nigeria that they were going to come after him. And in the process, that is when he left. And now they came into Gambia and they're controlling Gambia's resources. Same thing. They use divide, conquer, and then that's the strategy they've used. So we should be aware of that whole division and conquering, which they're now trying to apply within Ambazonia by using all these little organizations, little institutions, 5 IGs, just to you do what I would call Nia, the whole situation, and then come in and conquer using divide and rule. So we should always be very watchful and paying attention to strategies like those.
And talking about we should call a spade a spade. The idea of creating the IG was a very, how do you call it, formidable tool in breaking down this revolution. Formidable tool by the enemy. Was well coordinated and masterminded. Probably those who were part of that government, they were not the architects of pushing forward for a government. Because you look at how it ended up, they already had their implants from within. They shattered the thing. I mean, it lost its value. If we had functioned from what Holyhope law had initially, stated, don't form a government, form some sort of a revolutionary council, and function from that perspective. If they had followed through with that, wouldn't be where we are. You get it? They consolidated everything. They started breaking into pieces. The highest confusion that has occurred is within the state, so within the IG themselves. There are two things that that particular piece has done: confusion amongst itself and then attacking the egg of C. That's just what they have done. Break them into little pieces. As you break them, you try to destroy the backbone of the egg of the revolution. We have survived all the manipulations, the attack till today, and we are still standing. Now, when you look at it, where is the strength? Where is the IG itself? What is it really up? What is it doing now in this revolution? It has gone radioactive, splitting into bits and pieces, and then you see the only last thing standing is the egg of C. That's the only last thing standing within the Amazon revolution is the egg of C. People should see it clear for what it is. And I use this opportunity to tell the fighters on the ground, don't waste your firepower currency for nothing. You need a leadership, a solid one. They're not changing anything about it for our leadership of the Toyabacho. Okay, coming to that, because you see, you brought us the issue of divide and rule, as you said, and that's how they're applying in our revolution. You also see that there's something I want to always talk about it. Their successes has come as a fact when you are dealing with these colonialists, you understand the game that they have been playing. Those three states, they were requesting for weapons to fight the enemy, but they were selecting the type of weapon that they wanted to give them, knowing that the enemy has those the so-called terrorists or those who are creating chaos in the country have a heavier firepower. So, what has changed so far that you see them taking the upper hand?
Right.
What has really changed?
Right.
With the governance and everything.
One of the strategies that the West use in especially Africa or in other places has been to keep you as poor and wretched as possible. They fought, and then depending on their loans, depending on them. So the strategy was to keep all these countries as economically poor, wretched. Most of the monies that they made, they take all of it through various processes, including even giving you loans at very high interest rates. So at the end of the day, you were left with almost nothing. And then they came to you whenever you do not abide by what they were trying to accomplish, including signing unfavorable contracts on your behalf. Then they bring in these forces or these so-called terrorist organizations or Muslim fundamentalists. Meanwhile, they were all terrorist organizations that they sponsored. They bring in those forces to strengthen your government and the stability of your country. Then to basically put pressure on you to accept whatever it is that they were trying to get you to accept, including signing off your resources and then voting in their favor in international organizations like United Nations Security Council resolutions. So what they did too, in addition to that, was by keeping you poor, you couldn't afford to buy weapons to defend yourself. The vice president of Mali makes allusion to the fact that there were times when soldiers were like, you could have 7 soldiers sent to battle with 1 AK, and then they share those AKs were transferred between each of them. They would request for weapons from this international community, mostly controlled by the West, and those weapons will never be provided to them. Most of the time, they were told that the weapons will not be sold, that only weapons that they thought that they needed could be sold to them. So what has changed by having this multipolarity come in, where you now have major other actors like Russia and China coming in, this AES organization, l'Association des États du Sahel, now pivoting towards those countries. Those countries do not ask them any questions. They do not ask them whether they're democracy or not. They do not intrude into the internal politics of these AES countries. Basically, if you have the money, we'll sell what you need to you. So Russia has, and especially China, no restrictions. If you need whatever kind of weapons, they get it. So long as they can afford for it, they're getting sold to them. So now it's given these countries the capacity to go after these terrorists. Most of the terrorist organizations that are now operating are now hiding in countries like Algeria, then coming into the AES territories and committing havoc and then running back. And they do know that most of these countries now have drone surveillance capacities with possibilities of airstrikes that are taking them now and making these countries more stable. And another thing that has happened too is the fact that they have liberated themselves economically from the stranglehold of the West. And by liberating themselves economically from the stranglehold of the West, they now have the financial capacity to afford. I mean, the loans that were strangling them, they have not received any additional loan. They've not received any additional aid. They've not received any kind of funding, but just the amount of money by having better management that they are now generating in their countries that are allowing them to engage in projects that up 30 years ago was not seen. Road networks are being built, dams are being built.
I saw the roads that Burkina Faso is building, man.
It's unbelievable.
I'm telling you.
Infrastructure projects that are being built, even in the middle of the fact that they are still fighting terrorists.
Fighting a war.
It's incredible what these countries are doing. Niger now. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not cutting it short.
No worries at all.
African countries, what I've seen in those countries that is changing the dynamics. Those strong men, they are forcefully renegotiating all the contracts. They are renegotiating every contract in their country. It is their raw material, their resources.
Including, even military contracts, like what they had with contracts that were forced
yes,
like that. Now they said no, we're not.
No, we need to start afresh. If you don't see us as equal partners, you are out. You cannot come to our country and taking 90% of the resource from our country and we have zero. They put the calculations, the figures on the book, and ask those people, those companies, is this fair? That's what they're asking them. Is this fair? They open the books and ask them, is this fair? Look. So they have the power to renegotiate all their contracts. You get it? They are renegotiating everyone. And this guy from Mali, from Niger, is a very smart dude. They caught about 300 million that was moving from Niger and was going through Addis Ababa. They caught. It was going to Dubai. That gold, I don't know if you saw those images.
Right.
He was looking for the least opportunity to renegotiate all his contracts. The moment he caught that, you know what he did? He zoomed in immediately and suspended all contracts for any exploitation in his country. He suspended all the contracts and then started figuring out renegotiation. That is their country. And he took advantage of that. He was smart to have done that. So you look at the same thing that even Gambia did that. I'm sorry, this country, Guinea. where Mamadou Doumbouya is.
Yeah, Mamadou Doumbouya. Yeah.
And the renegotiation of contracts for
Yeah.
bauxite.
Right.
He renegotiated the contract with bauxite, and he told them you have to process this to a certain level in my country.
Right.
Not add value, then you are out of my country. They had to start doing that.
Right.
That's why at times strong men is necessary for Africa.
Right.
The same thing that this guy is doing. Burkina Faso, the guy from Burkina Faso and Mali.
Right.
They are set all on exploiting gold in their country, national property. That's how they have decided all exploited gold is theirs. Those that are exploited, those areas that are map of exploitation, they are renegotiating the contract. But they are saying that in other areas where they have not discovered gold, is the government that owns it. If you come to do exploitation of those resources, they are the ones that decide on the terms on how you're going to exploit it, and what goes into their coffers. Look at what is happening in the so-called the Republic of Cameroon. There are regions, there's a region in the Indian area where they are removing gold there, guarded by the French soldiers. Okay. Yes, we don't have any access.
You just see helicopters get up, take off, and land. Yeah. No access.
And you see that's a big change that those guys have brought in.
I saw this other one video where there is this timber being tied up on a truck, and these guys are there just struggling, no equipment, they're just doing it. So I'm thinking to myself, this huge timber probably took 200 years to get to where it is, and there are no roads here. That I mean, the truck that was to pull this timber was basically sitting in deep mud. There is no road, and then you're taking it almost for free to go sell it to these people. Why don't you force them, like strong men, like you talked about, to build the roads that will come to get your timber?
Build the roads, build the processing of those timbers to logs. You're not taking raw logs. You are processing those timber. You're giving job to your people. You process, even if you need part of the timber to your country, it will go semi-processed, and you are marketing it. You are selling it out. You have added value to it. Even if you are selling those countries, they are going out under that value. Even if you're exporting it, the tax will be different. Those are some minor changes that you can do. You can take control of the country. You know what the most shocking thing I heard about that I found out was, do you know that when they seized power from Laurent Gbagbo in Ivory Coast and gave it to Alassane Ouattara, every French, and you know who told me that every French interest that was affected, Ivory Coast had to pay back the French companies, corporations, and everything that was lost during that upheaval.
In that period. That's how evil this guy. That's how evil these guys are.
The worst country is France. Their level of evil on the black race. It's not only in Africa. Any of their contact with even Haiti is suffering to Haiti because of France.
That exactly.
That's the evil of that nation, the name of France. They used even Africans to fight their wars. The one here, you hear the case in Senegal that I was reading. They fought the war and won the war. They promised to pay them their money. When they came to ask for their money, they took them and massacred them.
Yeah, they call in French les tirailleurs.
Yeah.
Where essentially these guys went and fought on behalf of Europe against Germany. Well, on behalf of the other countries against Nazism and Germany.
And they used most of the people who took the hard job. They used all in the cannon fighters. The hardest tasks.
And I'm even told that a lot of them were the ones that were sent on the front lines because they were a lot sent on the front lines because they were the first to be killed. And then the Europeans would then be behind them coming after that.
Yeah.
And then they survive. They survive. They come back, and instead of compensating them for pension and retirement benefit and all of that when they asked for it,
simple salary.
They were all massacred.
That is the evil that we are dealing with, and we have to call it what it is. And we have to confront it, looking at it eyeball to eyeball, face it squarely. That's why I'll play this other piece of this kind of the video.
Let me make this point really quick now that it's in my mind, and it had to do with the fact that you talked about Haiti. Because I want people to be very careful what there are audios that are put out there by these divisive forces. That sometimes they listen to this audio, they believe that the ADF or the AGOC has done this or has done that without knowing the context of the actions of the Amazonian Governing Council or the Amazonian Defense Forces.
Yeah.
Understand that sometimes, a lot of times, you have to kind of get a history of an institution, a history of the actions of certain organizations. The history of the Amazonian Governing Council or of the ADF proves to you that they've always stood on the side of the people. They stood on the side of right. Sometimes they may do something that may not really be correct, but it doesn't mean that they went in with the mindset to do that. It may just mean that it's a mistake. Mistakes are made in struggles or in the fight for struggles. So when you listen to all this propaganda out there, understand the history. I say that too because if you talked about Haiti. What is happening in Haiti today? They are presenting all these guys that are fighting as gangs.
Yeah.
And then bringing in people like Kenya, the Kenyan police forces, to come and fight on them, using us to fight against us, but using their propaganda machine to say these are gangs.
To give a different
different narrative. So we should always be cognizant of if you watch, you think you watch the likes of this big Western media. I was trying to name, but maybe that's not a good idea. Western media, don't just believe that because it's coming from these big media houses that it is a true story. They're calling these individuals gangs. Meanwhile, the president of Haiti, I think his name is Henri Ariel, he's not able to return to Haiti. He's now hanging in Puerto Rico.
He resigned, right?
I'm sorry?
He resigned, right?
Yeah, he recently resigned because he didn't really necessarily have a choice. If you're a president of a country and you're unable to return to your country because of gangs, then there's a problem with your military, then there's a problem with your police force, then there's a problem with it. It means therefore that these are not gangs, these are paramilitary forces that have the capacity to keep you out of your own country. It means they're stronger than even your own military. Yeah. So it is good to recognize the fact that these individuals, paramilitary forces that are fighting against your government. Now we can go into the details of why they are fighting against your government, just given the fact, without necessarily going out of topic subject matter, because I think it plays a role of us understanding propaganda against the true nature of what is really going on.
Yeah. Because sorry, let me touch one thing on Haiti. Those guys are fighting against foreign forces in their country. The president that resigned he wasn't elected.
Never elected.
He was not elected. After they killed the other president, was trying to stand up for his country, and was killed by a paramilitary that left some security firm from Florida, participated in the killing of that president, and they were caught and shown on the screen. So after that, they had to look for, those who are the handlers, the Western handlers had to impose this guy to continue to exploit Haiti. Haiti has some very rare minerals used in space program to continue to manage those things and continue to keep Haiti poor. You get it? So those guys that are fighting on the street, they are fighting against foreign intervention in Haiti. They will call them gangs? No. We will look at it from a perspective of Africans and Pan-Africanists as liberators, freedom fighters. They are freedom fighters and liberators of their land. They don't want foreign intervention into their own country. That's the biggest problem in Haiti. And whatever has been happening in Haiti has been intentional, has been engineered. Let's know and call it for what it is. It has been engineered. And I believe that as Africa slowly asserts itself, they should use Haiti, they should take Haiti in as as a parent. The first free black republic globally. Haiti should be integrated into the AU. If AU were really something and meant, if AU was for Africans, Haiti should be a part of the AU, to be part of the AU, to shield Haiti economically by trading with Haiti and helping that our own first republic to thrive. That's how we are supposed to be looking at it and be strategic. I always have a feeling that the more they torment Haiti, somehow spiritually affects Africa, because that's our republic. That's our first republic as a black state, the first most freest nation globally that fought against oppression and stood on its own from slavery to power. And that's why they have been punished today. Every other major nation are working hard to continue to punish Haiti for breaking rules as a black nation, free itself and stand up against colonialism. And besides that, they are still exploiting. A lot of things happen in Haiti. Even Haiti, people brought in the name of NGOs. They brought in cholera and infected people with cholera during their crisis, the earthquake. But you hear the mainstream media of the hush hush, they don't say anything about it. You hear it through social media. That's what they did to that country. They brought in cholera and poisoned the people.
The extent to which the lesson too that thank you, comrade, for giving that overview. The few things that I'm going to add to what you just said too was the biggest mistake, to recognizing that the biggest mistake that Haiti made, according to the West, was for them to fight for their independence. This was just about 28 years after the U.S. had independence in 1776. Yeah. Haiti had its independence in like 1804, 28 years later. And during that time, the United States was still had a slave mentality where they were owners. This was 28 years after independence, where they were major, like even the president at the time had slaves too. So they couldn't tolerate the fact that the message that this sent was for the fact that slaves could revolt against the slave masters and take ownership and become independent. So since then, they went on. A lot of people use this terminology and don't even know what it means, where they call gunboat diplomacy. In, I think it's 1915, what they did to Haiti, they brought in all these European states, Denmark included, Germany, Canada, the United States. They sent boats to Haiti, threatened them after that independence, including the French, that if you do not pay off for the amount of money that we've lost because of the slavery, because of your independence, then basically we will blow up the entire country. So that is when Haiti accepted to pay that money to the French. So essentially the gunboat diplomacy came from the fact that they came up with all these boats and then threaten you. And that's one of the strategies that they use. That they use this military might.
They gang up like a pack of wolves.
Of wolves.
They gang up like a pack of wolves to attack smaller nations. So that has always been the mindset of the West. I'll call it openly Western, the mindset. Look at everything that's going on. That's how they are always operated. I think going back to Sahel, those countries have copied and mastered it. That's why they could even survive. Because they gang up together to fight any oppressor. We go back to what you're saying. You can imagine the evil, particularly of France and the Westerners. I am a slave. I have made you have used me to build your country, your money, your wealth, your everything. You're the strongest country in the world. I revolt to free myself from being a slave. Then you hold me to pay reparations for you for freeing myself.
Yeah, because you consider me chattel, like an asset. Yeah, like property. Yeah. It's all unbelievable. And then the one thing that we should learn from this strategy, or we should learn from this whole experience, is that they've come to us and they've said, we want to partner with you Africans. Meanwhile, Haiti is here. First of all, we need to see what they're doing to Haiti. Canada, the US, and France, mostly, and the other European states. They've come to Haiti. They don't want to show their presence there, like say these countries have military occupations there. Haiti does not have a military because they disbanded after Bertrand Aristide came in 95. They pushed him to disband the Haitian military. So, but they supported these little groups of people. The richest person in Haiti right now is nobody that looks like any of the Africans. He's actually a former Jewish ambassador that was there for 25 years, basically taken over. He's a billionaire, basically taken over. And then what he does is, or what the likes of him is just not one person. The first person, second, third, fourth, fifth billionaire in Haiti, they are no people. They don't look like Haitians. So because what they've done is they are controlling those in those areas that have Haitian resources, and then have created groups of Haitians that are like paramilitary military forces, brought in weapons from Florida, and provided to these people to guard their interests. So at some point, this guy called Jimmy Barbecue, he becomes one of the strongest. He's a police officer that left the police force. He becomes one of the strongest of individuals that control such structure. He's no longer happy with his masters, and then goes after the government has been imposed. And because he gets the support of the population, because he's now speaking in terms of kicking out the imperialists,
Yes.
Then they go against him. But then he negotiates with the other factions, and then they form what is called the G9. And the G9 is now going against the government, because now they recognize the fact that we can be together and call for the independence, actual independence, true independence of Haiti.
Yes.
So the president then resigns because he can't come out because of these paramilitary forces are now controlling Haiti. He resigns in favor because he's pushed now by the West to resign, so that way they can form a presidential transitional council, who are people that are. It's like replacing what happened in Gabon, replacing Omar Bongo with still one of theirs.
Still controlling it.
Still controlling it. Yeah, exactly, without recognizing the fact that people like Barbecue that they don't like anymore can now take over and actually move the country towards the direction in which is different from what the imperialists want. So the imperialists, the lesson that I'm pushing towards by creating this scenario first, is the fact that you cannot hate the progress of Black people in your own country, because a lot of the things that the US is not doing is because it will benefit tremendously Black people. So basically, they will not do it. But say, imagine like say universal health care. So it means therefore that Black people are going to have health care.
They better not have it.
Then they better not have it. So imagine that situation. Imagine that you have a country of people of color like Cuba, or people of color like Haiti, being able to have a country like Hong Kong or Singapore that are run like maybe Atlanta, Georgia, that are run like a very successful progressive country. That they will not stand that. Then imagine them coming to you, to Africa, to tell you that we are here for your interests. How do you believe people like that?
When they are not treating your kind very well.
Exactly. So I thought that we recognize the fact that they're not looking out for our interests. For those of us that are thinking somewhere that is better to align with the West as opposed to maybe Russia and China, they've proven to us time and time again, first of all, enslaving us and then making us economically powerless by putting in Jim Crow laws and so on and so forth. How do you think that, and then making sure that they block the progress of countries like Haiti or even Cuba, or countries that are primarily for people of color,
black-skinned people,
the brown-skinned people, of making any kind of progress? How do you think that those same group of people would come to you and fight for your interests? There is no benevolence in countries like the West. They will never be benevolent to you because they can't stand to see you become a strong and economically viable entity.
You know, you bring a very key point. As you were just talking, something crossed my mind. As a global Black family, we could not see that picture because they could control the media, control the narrative, localize our sufferings. But if you look at it you have an eagle's view, you will see that all of us are suffering globally is structured in the same manner. They could see it from above, but they use the media to break us into pieces localize our sufferings, that you sit here and think that, oh, you are suffering alone. This one who stays here, oh, you are suffering alone. Then they limit the movement of black people across the world through their visas and whatever. For you to be able to sit up and look at it from an eagle's viewpoint and say, oh, I can identify what is happening in El Salvador, exactly what is happening in India, the blacks of India and the blacks of El Salvador. If you look across now with the social media that has exposed this, you look across the world, the structures, the shape, and everything. If you look at the plight of the black man in Latin America, is the same structure of the plight of the black man in India or Bangladesh or Philippines, because there are dark-skinned Filipinos there, like you and I. But they hardly show. So it is a concerted effort that has been put in place. And now we are beginning to figure out and see from one perspective to the next that this is, our eyes are opening to see that this is not just like, look, small, silos. No, it is a global concerted effort to subjugate us and keep us in the place that we are. And you make a very good point. Africans are beginning to question the fact that you cannot tell us that you treat us well when our kind, in where you live, look at the black people in France, look at the treatment of blacks in France. Do you expect that you are going to have a normal transaction with France and Africans? It's not possible. Wherever black people are, anybody, any diplomat or country coming to deal with African nations, first of all, the African nations start looking at how are you treating my kind in your country? If you are killing them off, you are relegating them or putting them in ghettos, we should start thinking from that perspective, renegotiating our thought process, recalibrating our thought process, and looking at it from a perspective of, if you're not treating my people well, I don't think I have much to deal with you. I'd rather deal with other people that don't even have my own people, or they have humanity of my own type of people to know how to regulate my decision. You should be strategic and selective in how we operate from a business perspective and also diplomatic perspective globally. We should start assessing ourselves from that perspective. Start looking at it from that angle. Because if we are not looking at it from that global perspective, they will continue to manipulate us and continue to keep us as treat us like vermin of the earth, or our role is just come and suffer and die to work for other people, the race of people. No, we refuse that. Since we have a couple of things to touch on, let me just move forward. There's something I wanted to touch. I want to talk about the mindset of presidents in Africa, how they are dealt with.
I'm sorry, you said the mindset of
presidents in Africa.
Oh, yes.
I want us to look at the mindset of presidents in Africa, the ones that are selected. And I want to also touch on that aspect and how their role in Africa, their mindset, how they operate in Africa. And then we'll take Senegal like an example, the president of Senegal like an example about his behavior and attitude towards the recent election that took place in Senegal. But before we go to that, I want us to play this video so I can put context in it and be able to talk more about what I want us to discuss. Let me play this video so I can pick up a couple of things.
What I want to speak here tonight, Mayogun, the issue of Nigeria. Nigeria, I'm from Liberia, by the way. The name of my country is Liberia. And if you know Liberia, Nigeria helped us in the 90s when we had civil war in our country. Liberia was falling apart. We fought civil war, from 1999 down to 2003, and Nigerian forces helped quench the civil war in Liberia. So Nigeria was the hope of the continent, the giant of Africa, the country we all look up to and say, one day in the future, this is going to be our China. this is going to be our United States. If Nigeria succeeds, Africa succeeds. Every African, especially if you live in West Africa area, I'm not talking about regular people, but people who really analyze issue, you will know that Nigeria was the hope of the continent. But unfortunately, in the last 10 years, we've seen Nigeria going down the drain. We've seen Nigeria promising future now becoming dashed, and we've seen that it seems that there's no hope. So when people are making a lot of analysis, I come in and tell them that this is my own understanding. The problem in Nigeria is a summary of what is happening in all of African countries, which is number one, the way we got independence, the institutions that we inherited were not decolonized. It's like the colonial masters made a deal with people we call freedom fighters, and they replaced them. They just replaced the white Oyibo with our black brothers who continue the colonial legacy. And I will give you an example. Your police is a typical colonial police. During the colonial era, the police was meant to protect the colonial elite. The police was there to beat up the people, subdue them, and terrorize them to protect the colonial masters. That's what the African police do now. That's what the Nigerian police does. The elite of the colonial era, they were bourgeoisie who lived in Africa, but then their real home is London. Their hospital is Paris. When the colonial masters get sick, they take them to Lisbon, they take them to Paris, they take them abroad to go to get treated in the what they call the metropole. And the Africa was the farm, was the place they work, was where is where you extract the natural resources. The London is where you go to enjoy it. Our elite are following the same pattern. The educational institutions were designed to make the colonial masters to look like saviors and tell the people who have been exploited to appear as if they are being indebted. They have to be grateful to the colonial masters for giving them education. Why that education was actually a miseducation. If you watch our education today, it followed the same pattern. The religion was created to pacify the public in order for them not to stage a revolution. The colonialists were in bed with the religious masters. They tell the people to calm down. In fact, our traditional rulers, some of them were compromised. Those of them who refused to compromise were removed from their throne. If you compromise with the colonial system, then you remain on your throne. Today is the same thing.
I know that this is really jam-packed, what this guy just said. I would like to keep it at that point before we talk further about it. So when you listen to what he has said, and you look at how our African presidents are behaving, can you really expand on what this guy is trying to say, or bring some, situations or scenarios of the disease that's currently eating up our society, the plague that is destroying us and making us look like wretched people globally? Because without a strong Africa, the black race globally is weak. That's why you see a strong China projects strong Chinese globally that you can mess around with Chinese across the world. And that's why you even saw during the COVID era, America was quick and fast to pass laws protecting the Chinese, the Asians, because of the strength of China. But because we are weak as Africans, that's how they continue to treat us globally as a people, no matter how wealthy you are. If Africa is not strong, we'll continue to get that abuse globally. So when you look at what he said from the perspective of the colonialists, the type of education, and also how our current leaders function, what can you really say in relation to what he puts out there?
I think to a great extent he's right, and I'm very supportive of what he said, comrade. if we look back, there was a period after the Second World War from like 1945 where America came into prominence, where most of the European states had been defeated by Hitler, bombed out Europe, and Europe was going through a reconstruction, which was largely funded by the United States. It wasn't really primarily bombed. Russia won the First World War. We've been miseducated to think that the U.S. entry was what really put the nail on the coffin. But that aside, from then on all the way through to maybe 2010, has been described as the unipolar moment. Unipolar meaning that the US was the only guy on board. I mean, they had the strongest military, the strongest economy, they were the ones that were telling everybody what to do. Now you have an opportunity where China presents an alternative, because what the US went on to do was to use the international institutions to saddle most countries in debt, especially African countries, including La Republique, saddled them in debt, made sure that the economy was not progressive, made sure that the citizens were all maybe wretched, and then extracted their resources. The West was doing that. Now, to get to your question, you have an opportunity, therefore, that China presents, Russia presents through the BRICS. The Nigerian government, it's a 400 and these are 2022 numbers. It's a $472 billion economy. The South African state is a $405 billion economy. You would think that with that kind of power, the Nigerian government will be the one that will be driving BRICS activity in Africa. Mm-hmm. But because BRICS had recognized that the Nigerian government had been compromised, I mean, from Goodluck Jonathan to who is the guy that was just defeated by Tinubu, defeated by Buhari, and then Tinubu. All of these guys were selected. They were selected to do. I mean, most of Nigerian economies has significant French investments. And then there is obviously Shell, BP that operates in the Niger Delta area. So as a result of that, their economy is controlled by the West. So they impose directives as to who is selected, who does what, and so you would have thought that Nigeria would be the first economy in Africa, be given their size and the strength to drive BRICS activity, or even at least to join BRICS. But because they've been in the sidelines and the presidents are selected to do the things that the West is doing, it's really been a hindrance towards the growth of the African economies. Not just that, he is just an example. You have now look at what happened in Niger just about a month ago or so. There was a senior African, CENTCOM, African Command, the general that commands U.S. troops that are in the area of Africa, that govern the African territorial space. He was together with the ambassador in Mali and some other top U.S. officials. They went in and had a meeting in which they were pushing the Nigerian administration to organize elections. Mm-hmm. They've not done that with Gabon, where this other guy took office from there by military coup. They've not done that in Chad, which was Chad. They've not done that in all of these places. So essentially, those presidents that are not selected, those presidents that are not powerful, that are not going after the interest. I'm actually still concerned with the Senegalese president, because he came in with his first speech. He was talking about the fact that the Western interest was they would maintain. He didn't really say that in those words, but in other words, he said they would the interest of our partners would not be messed with. Would not, yeah, exactly. So essentially, still so we're still concerned in that regards about him. But when you're selected, then and you go on to move to people like Alassane Ouattara,
Yeah,
Macky Sall, these are
the
all
biggest news.
the biggest stooges. These are all people that were selected. They go in, they do
Oh
what
yeah,
they want in there, and then at the end of the administration, somebody like Macky Sall, he takes a huge parachute, and then he goes back to meet his masters over there in France to settle in, and then allows for the new generation of the Macky Salls and this Cyril, the guy in Gabon, to continue to do the work of the stooge. I mean, previously you had white faces that were like governors representing the operations of these other colonial powers. Now they've replaced those white faces with black faces, African brothers doing exactly identical work. So, which is a pity for us.
even worse. Look at the president. This old octogenarian in Cameroon called the Republic of Cameroon called Biya. He
Right.
sees France and Switzerland as his nation.
Exactly.
This is a dude that has spent nearly all his life, his entire life as a president in France or Switzerland.
In Switzerland. There was a time when over 70% of the La République administration held the French passport.
Yeah,
That tells you who they're representing.
yeah, they represent the French. They don't see the country as theirs. They feel more like foreigners to their own people.
Young people.
Then, yeah, that is the game that I've been pulling around with us. That's the same game. That's the more reason why you look at someone like Macky Sall. He doesn't spend up to 24 for 8 hours. The moment he hands over power, he rushes and runs and goes to France. Because to him, he feels and thinks that he is more of a French than Senegalese. But wait on the street when they call him the N-word to remind him of who he is and where he comes from, then you understand. No matter how they play you, you still remain one big N. You get it? Because that's a mindset that's what us fail to have. Africans who steal resources from Africa and stash it abroad, they think that they will take the money or when they will run away and come and enjoy the money. No, you will be reminded in the West that you are not one of them. You don't belong there. And the irony is that when they steal this money and stash it in the Western banks, when they come to keep those money, they even show the way to hide it in safe havens. But when you get out of power, they restrict you from having access to that money. Who are you going to report to?
Exactly. If
The
they
moment
have
you're dead, they'll tell you you stole that money.
If they dare to take Russia's $600 billion US dollars and including interest and freeze those funds, then who are you as a single African president?
No, even if you just open your mouth, they'll flip the books at you, and that's what has been happening. Most African leaders, they'll flip the books at you and tell you that you stole this money. You'll be begging to run away.
Gaddafi's money is still with them. They never released it to the Libyan government.
Never released it. What about the money from how to call it, Mobutu? How many trillions of dollars and structures that you built in Belgium? Where are they? Is it the Congolese property? No. The idiocy and the stupidity of our leaders and our people is that when you steal this money and stash it abroad, you build the economy of the people abroad. You allow them to continue to get richer and continue to come and abuse you in the continent. And then you don't even have access to it. You walk on the street and they'll remind you of who you are. One N in the US. And that is who you are. Instead of you using that money to stash it, even if you steal the money, put it in your country, use it to grow your economy and improve on the people's conditions. You will see in some ministers, you will see tons upon tons of dollars and euros. You stash that money, plus the one they have stolen and put in safe havens in their abroad, they build their economy. The same people come and insult your country as shithole countries. When do we think? When do we think?
And look at what they did when they had that African, US African meeting, however you call it. And they invited all these presidents and they came, they put them in buses and took, I mean, these are presidents of countries, put them in buses and hauled them to wherever the meetings were taking place.
That was totally in the UK when in the UK when they were coronated, when the Queen died or so. I think I think it was that during that era that they stashed all of them in a bus and sent to that place. Only one person stood up. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia. He said, I have an ambassador and have my car, and I would go there with my ambassador's car, my state car. She didn't budge. And that's what she did. All other presidents were stuck in one bus and rally like school children. That is the mindset. That's what has been done to our own people. Look, they don't care. They look at Africa as their, how do you call it? They look at Africa as a place for them to extract and take the wealth there. You think they'll look at you as one of them? No. You help for them to rob your country, take your wealth, and you start it back to the people who keep on oppressing and abusing your own people. That's why you will see them Pakistan will run away from. Then you see the other person, the one in Gabon, when they were pulling it, they make some noise. There is people abroad across the world. Yeah. That should make some noise. Because he doesn't see himself as a Gabonese. He sees himself as a foreigner in his own land.
Look, the one lesson that they should all learn from the Russia, because Russia had a lot of these people they call oligarchs.
Yes.
Who had plenty of money. So their money, when they sanctioned Russia, they were taking away, they were freezing the funds of these individuals. A lot of them ran back to Russia, brought their money with them. And so what happened was now they've invested a lot of that money into Russia, and the Russian economy is just booming.
It's booming. It's about 40%.
Yeah, they grew by that much last year, and they're projecting to grow even more this year. Even though they're at war.
That's why that's how this. I don't know. Is that they feel more. I mean, to them they have achieved, they have arrived. They look at people. That's why you don't even have good hospitals in Africa. When you start seeing the revolutionaries like the Magufuli was killed, start thinking of we have to do things here. We have to do things here. We must do things here. I watched a video. I don't have time to pull that video of this lady from the first lady of Sierra Leone. She was making a statement that when Europeans come, they give them just 0.1. I say, you people sign it. You sign it.
Right. She did.
Why don't you negotiate effectively? Are you scared? Anyway, they select them, because when you select them, you can sign for it. Just as what you are saying. When you are selected by the West, you can sign for anything. When you have revolutionaries within your nation taking care and fighting for your people, so don't buy into that crap. That's what Magufuli did. He renegotiated and all those contracts and started looking into the books. And within 4 years, look at how he transformed his country. You just need people who are patriotic to change the status and the state of their nation. That's all Africans need. You know, you will see Macky Sall, he ran away. The first place he was to go to France. He didn't spend it long because he don't identify himself like part of a country. And I will go back to one thing. Us Africans have to define our own pathway of governance. It's not one size of shoe fits all. Libya was good in their own structure and form of governance. They were good. You could see in their people, they look at their country now, they bomb democracy into them. You know, one other thing I wanted to touch on them. We start thinking of rounding up. You know, there's always been this discussion about Kagame foiling the issues in Congo. It comes up time and again. It comes up so often. You hear of the rebel M23. I want us to touch on that, and the last topic that we can wrap up with other little things is I think Africans, I call us Africa in general, Africans, we got a little victory when they partially uplifted sanctions from Zimbabwe. We'll touch on those two things and then we'll wrap it up. We'll keep the other topics for the next time.
Okay.
So Yeah, let's look at Rwanda. So what can you say about Kagame, Rwanda, M23 in Congo, and the situation there over there? Because time and again, to me, I would say that there's a concerted effort to smear Kagame. So, but I don't know, because there's this tool also. You brought some couple of things that the pressure to put on presidents. One of the things is that the model, if we have that autonomy in our nation, we can practice democracy. But as long as there's external meddling, it's difficult. If you, as a president, that you want to protect your interests and your people, like what happened in Ivory Coast, if they don't succeed in trying to convince or ban you, what they do is that they prop in an opposition, use their soft power CIA tools, the NGOs, to work internally within your people, create chaos, look for cracks within the government, pump in cash and finances in the opposition, breed that heavy division. During the elections, they grant the opposition will normally win after having sponsored by external parties, NGOs supporting them, so that when you win, you come back to power, and then you continue doing the bidding for the colonialists, the imperialists. So when you look at what is currently happening in Rwanda, I mean in Congo, because that is a demise that Africans suffer the most. That's one of the biggest scars in Africa. Congo, M23, Rwanda, and Kivu. What can you say about what's the knowledge about that area and what's happening there? Because we are looking at things not just as Amazonians, we are looking at things as collective,
right,
or as Africans as a collective. What's happening in that area? What do you know? What can you say about that?
And as we look at these things as Africans as a collective, it is by looking at them and learning lessons, so that way when we learn those lessons, when it confronts us, then we know exactly what is going on and how to act, how to approach it exactly. And you're very right, comrade. When the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad, was to be taken out, they used exactly the same strategy that you just narrated, where they created an opposition. There was a time when the CIA actually fought with the U.S. Marines, because I'm not going to say anything on this channel that I'm not 100% sure of what happened.
Yes.
So this is, if you can research what I'm about to say, I'm not saying to you, but those that are watching us, they can research this, where basically the CIA was working with ISIS to use the ISIS forces to go after Bashar al-Assad. But the instructions to the U.S. Marines was the understanding that ISIS was a terrorist organization. They were listening to that on TV, on the radio. So then they go after the ISIS forces. Then the ISIS forces had CIA agents too working with them. So that then now it was a battle between the U.S. Marines and the CIA operating. So these are situations that would happen when you have a situation where they use an opposition group to fight against another, when another institutions within the same hegemon did not really understand that was what was happening, because it is kept outside of the media. But that said, using the situation of Rwanda, it goes right back to, I'm not going to stretch the story, but in summary, the 1884, where they do the partition of Africa, you have a situation where they cut the same village, and one of the same villages appearing in Rwanda, and the other part of the same village, the same people, is appearing in Zaire, Congo, Kinshasa. And in that situation, the Congolese end up not recognizing the portion of their own territory or the people that live there as actual Congolese, because they see them. A lot of the Rwandans too had come in, had actually fed there too during the Rwandan genocide. But they refuse to recognize these people as actual Congolese. And the people now take up arms to defend themselves. They form this organization called the M23. 2023. So to defend themselves. So Kagame is there. They're blaming him because a lot of other Rwandans that are in those villages, border villages, support their family members because they go back and forth. They're the same, exactly the same identical people. They're blaming him using, like we talked about the fact that they come in, they use a particular issue that particular groups of people may have. Like look at Russia. They come in, they use Ukrainians of Russian origins or that speak Russian and make them the blacklegs, and then make the Ukrainian government go against them in order to get to Russia because they know that. So similar situation going on here, where basically they now use these individuals to go after Kagame, blaming Kagame that he was the one funding these other people of that exist between Rwanda and Congolese that are in Congo's territory, to make sure that they bring down because I mean Rwanda has been growing by leaps and bounds every time they're expanding, building their economy, building their military. The Rwandan forces are now in Mozambique. They're the ones that are fighting now in Mozambique to protect the government in Mozambique against the opposition forces that are being sponsored by the
so-called the imaginary ISIS or ISIS or jihadis that appeared in Mozambique all of a sudden because they discovered gas and oil, heavy gas and oil wells in Zimbabwe. Then imaginary ISIS and terrorists just appear from nowhere. Yeah.
Now, same thing we're hearing about those same terrorists. I forget what ISIS Plus that committed the attack inside Russia. So they just come up with these names and these groups. Very soon we hear about ISIS P or ISIS K from some.
you make a point that's something that we have to educate our people on, because when they look at the people that have always stood for the president that have always stood for our people, Magufuli, he died mysteriously
in Tanzania.
Idi Amin, blackmailed. It's only now that we are peeling the onions and seeing that Idi Amin was one who had foreseen what was happening to Africa. He was way ahead of his time for Africans to understand.
Exactly.
They used movie to demonize him. You look at the likes of Thomas Sankara and Lumumba that were demonized.
And not going very far like that, comrade. There is this other president, I forget if he's president of, but it's an East African country where you had that German ambassador that came and was complaining about the fact that Chinese citizens were coming here, and he rebutted and said German citizens come here. I forget.
Botswana or Malawi?
One of those countries, I think it's Malawi. Yeah. And he too, basically, but I don't know if it's because of that comment that he made or they disappeared.
Yeah, he was becoming more for his people. He died mysteriously also. But the truth is this: we Africans, we have in our own culture, imbibed in our own culture, we transition. This war is a stage. We have come to a point where we have to be able to understand that our physical flesh we cannot preserve our physical flesh. We must do what is right by our people and by our race. We should not be scared and will not be scared of death. If they are going to use death to threaten us, we will do right by our people. It's left for our people to stand by us and with us to know that we work for the betterment of our own people. They thought they could frighten us with killing as people avoiding us. We have been scared that they're going to kill. Yeah, they always attempt. That's what the enemy does. You get it? When you look at all what we have said, like Kagame has worked so hard, tirelessly, to build his country, give his people basic amenities, keep his country the cleanest city in Africa, and they can say arguably the world. He has shown signs of a structured government, structured nation. They have even surpassed the genocide. They have mentally gone across genocide state era. They are working towards that. You see a beacon of hope for Africa. They will always look for one thing to smear the president. Look for one thing. They're doing everything possible to throw shit at Kagame. We Africans should not fall for that. His people are doing well. That's the same thing that we allowed Gaddafi to be killed. We started regretting after, Gaddafi was good for Africa. This is Kagame. They are trying to penalize him. What are Africans doing? Are we going with the same song that we that have been singing and always targeting our leaders, or are we standing behind our leaders? You really articulate the problem very well. Africans should understand something. Kagame doesn't have a hand in what is happening in Congo. As you said, the Congolese tribe, there's a tribe, a big part of Rwanda, a piece is in Congo. So when those people do whatever they are doing, people always relate it to Kagame. But he's not concerned or involved in. They always say, "Oh, M23 is sponsored by Kagame." No, M23 is located in an area that is very rich. They have money for resources. They can acquire it, and they are fighting because the Congolese government, as rightfully said, never treated them or used them, treated them as Congolese. They were always looking at them as foreigners. That's why they are fighting for some form of autonomy. The problem can be fixed if the Congolese government can be strong enough, but because a lot of foreign intervention in Congo to keep it confused, for them to continue stealing their resources. If the Congolese government can be strong enough to work out a deal with M23, granting them autonomy, equal representation in that government, working together as a nation to build that nation together, they'll overcome that. And then they refocus their attention on the enemy, that is the foreigners and the jackals and the imperialists exploiting their countries.
Absolutely. The size of Congo Brazzaville itself warrants that this country should be run as a huge federation. Where
yes.
Congo Brazzaville itself is bigger than the entire Western Europe put together. You can take all of Western Europe, including from the UK, all the way to the beginning of Ukraine, and feed it inside Zaire or former Zaire or Congo Kinshasa. So that exercise calls for a type of government that should be inclusive, like a federal system of government where each of the federated states has a significant amount of autonomy, where they are all recognized as citizens of Congo or Congo Kinshasa.
That is the best form of that. But the point is that the way the colonialists try to structure the country, they want that form of bureaucracy and single man power, single man rule, of which they know fully well they cannot function, they cannot work that. The biggest solution to Congo is the federated structure. That's rightfully said. Federated structure with autonomy to the various parts of Congo, and they have a federal government that can run that country, and they will be fine. But they said, I'll call it imperialism, and the reason why supremacy thrives the most in confusion. That's why they thrive the most. They keep knocking your heads together while they are sucking your resources. Because there are tarmacs in various parts of Congo where planes land and take off with resources. Didn't we see even drones that were caught? They were carrying minerals, caught by the Congolese people, carrying diamond. That's what is going on there. I want to ask you a question. If this is not really a scam, all these things in the name of United Nations or peacekeeping forces is scam, a global scam, a cover to steal. How comes those people that have had the highest force of peacekeeping force, over 200,000 since 1960, Congo has not seen peace today?
Exactly.
Yes, the highest of peacekeeping forces is in Congo.
And there have been times when they've caught them that are the ones that are doing the transportation of the resources, United Nations vehicles.
Yes.
Transporting resources of Congo, so that they're not recognized. In about 2 years ago, in what is that Mali area too? I forget the name, but Kidal, that's it. Yeah, in Kidal, the United Nations vehicles were also found there that had brought weapons and left the weapons in a previously occupied military base of the French. So basically, it was believed that they left those weapons there to allow the terrorist forces to be able to access those weapons and use them. So the United Nations peacekeeping forces have played a significant role in pushing for, so in being like the supposedly neutral force that is helping to assist the hegemon. Same thing with, they disbanded the forces, the military in Haiti, replaced them with UN forces to play the same role, keeping, I mean, basically playing the role of the hegemon.
They always say that one of the biggest place to hide something is in public. Yeah, one of the biggest place to hide something is in public, in the public. You put it out there, people will not see it. In this sense, what I mean is, you come in as peacekeeper, but you're the enablers of the chaos. How can you come and say you are peacekeeper? There has been a slow genocide in Congo. Over 8 to 10 million people have been killed. And they don't put any value in those people's lives. And the world is quiet. And that's where the highest extraction of mineral resources globally is happening.
It's happening. That's why the Malian government, that was the first thing that the Malian government did before even kicking out the French.
Yeah.
It refused for the UN forces agreement, whatever, MINUSMA.
Yeah,
to be renewed.
Yes, he kicked all of it out. His country is taking a good turn now. He's speaking to those guys who were in the how do you call these guys? The Tuaregs. They are forming a government together, granting them that involvement in the government, being a part of Mali, re-educating their people. You see, it does. What can France say? What can the EU forces say? It's not they don't have shame, but they'll claim the moral high grounds. But look at what they are doing to our people. There's one question before we end this. I'll ask ourselves. We have to ask ourselves. We keep on allowing the West to dictate on us. Who gave them that right? What gives them that authority to dictate and tell us what we are supposed to do? There was a time that I saw Macron was talking about how our women are supposed to give birth, or the number of children, or the blah, blah, blah. Who are they?
Exactly.
Why do we allow that? Who are they, first of all? When
the new government in sorry to interrupt you before you pick it back up. When the new government in Senegal took over, they put out a paper, and I forget the name of that newspaper that came up, and they were, instead of focusing on the plans of the new government or anything else, they were talking about the fact that the Senegalese people hated the president because of he had the polygamous arrangements, and they did not.
I'm sure it's a French paper, right?
It's a French newspaper. Yes, that's correct.
That's all they can do. Smear campaign. We see them for what they are and
so
who they are.
Who gives them the right to decide on?
I'm telling you, who gives them the right to determine and decide how our society is supposed to function? They came and dismantled every bit and piece of our society. To the least, name one good thing that these people have ever talked, have ever spoken about us that they copy from us. One. Nothing.
Nothing.
Across, yes, none of the things that they came and made, that they praised about us, from our spirituality, our culture, our economic system, our writing system, everything. Nothing. They never said. They have not seen it and said, "Oh, this was good. We made something." No. They coerce it, whitewash it, own it, and bring it back something else. Or if they don't understand it, they condemn it.
The president of Raytheon. I don't know if you've seen this, but the president of Raytheon, in an interview that was going on, he talked about the fact that it is time that the U.S. intervene in Africa directly in order to basically manage these countries that are not managing themselves well. And I'm thinking to myself,
the guy who Blackwater guy, the guy who owns Blackwater. He's a
BlackRock.
BlackRock,
one of the biggest investment firms in the world. Yes, investment in terms of assets under management.
Who gives them the right to think that they can decide how to manage people's lives? On what ground do they stand? What moral ground? Where do they come from to think that they can just walk in and say, hey, this is supposed to be like this. This is supposed
to be like this.
We have to. I think that renaissance, African Renaissance, is coming now up for us to challenge some of these questions and narratives.
And finally, before you close that chapter, democracy has been overrated. Look at the way that the Chinese political system or political structure works.
Yeah.
Where basically you have the Communist Party.
Yes.
You start out, in summary, you start out on the, like, really, if you join the party, you're in the basis in the local government, and then before you even join the party, you can't join the party by being like an uneducated fellow. They are very smart people. So the decision-making process is very, I don't want to use the word consensus-based. Yes, consensus-based, where institutions sit down as panels, have conversations, and those decisions are made. And finally, the president, the Chinese premier, goes on to implement these things. And I'm saying that in effect, the system works towards moving over how many hundreds of millions of people from poverty to where they are. Look at where China is. To millionaires.
They're getting thousands upon thousands of millionaires every year in China.
So look at where China is. Now they're coming in and telling us that we're not a democracy. Look at how just within this short space of time, look at where Niger is, look at where Mali is, where Burkina Faso is, being governed by individuals that have made up their minds that this is what has to be. We have to look out for our country. For our people. Look at Kagame that you were talking about. Whether he was elected democratically, whether he's organized elections or not, but he's moved his people from where they were war-torn, running as refugees from one country to another, transforming the entire state within these last 25 years to where they are today, and even having foreign investors, like foreign investment. BMW now assembles. They have a plant they have cell phone companies that's just to say that you don't need democracy, you don't need those systems of government, you don't need them coming to tell us how we should run our countries.
I'm not calling you short. Let's not be mistaken. Democracy has its various forms and how it fits their country. Let's understand something. The democracy that the West preach to us, it doesn't hold. We have our own form of democracy. Societies have their own different forms of democracy.
Yeah, we have chiefs. We had traditional councils. The councils thought about these issues. They communicated to the chief. The chief would then make a fight. I mean, those were traditional councils with democracy.
Yeah, we had democratic structures before they even came. There was consensus, general consensus. That's why even if you look, I want to ask one thing very clear. The Westerners introduced nothing to us. Before the advent of the Europeans, we had our chiefs who were their heads. They had a council. We had the executive, the judiciary board. We had all those structures of governance. If you go across Africa, before the come of Europeans, all our tribes and clans and kingdoms had those institutions. Let's look at it very well. They had those institutions. There was consultation before decisions were made. They knew how to resolve that problem. If we look at Rwanda, they exercised their own form of democracy. Because Kagame, before he even extended his term, they went into a referendum observed by external observers. That referendum that extended his own seat to one more term. There was no fraud. There was no intimidation. There was nothing. The first of all passed in the upper parliament. And then he said, no, it's not enough. They went into the house. The house passed it, wanting him to stay. He said it's not enough. They put in the referendum. They put in the referendum. Observers from the Western world and Africa went and observed that referendum. There was no fraud. There was no intimidation, no coercion. They voted for him to go in for a third term before. Then tell me, is there not any form of general consensus and acceptance? Who are you to come and impose? Tell me that you see someone and say you are high horse. This is not supposed to be so. Are you the one running that society? Do we come to run that society? There's only one last thing I want to touch on. What Niger has started and Mali must go across Africa. We don't need military bases in Africa. We don't need them. They don't add anything to us.
No,
They bring
zero
us
value.
chaos. They bring us chaos. They bring us terrorism. They bring us those are sources of all jihadis and civil war. We don't need, especially the French military bases. We don't see their use in our countries. Let them get out. Name any African, name any European country or Western country that has an African military base in their countries. Name one. So what are the bases doing in Africa? What are the military bases doing in Africa? Just name me one African nation that has a military base in a foreign, in the Western world. We don't have one. So what are they doing in Africa? They just sow confusion and chaos. So particularly the French bases are sources of providing military. Then war still, from what I learned, I don't know how far it's true, but what I hear, and I'm trying to find out a little bit, in Ghana, there are military bases in Ghana where the Ghanaian government and the president has no access to it in your own country.
That is true. That is true. Absolutely true. Correct. Yeah, the U.S. forces just fly back in and out, and they have no idea what is coming in and what's going out.
Africans,
because according to the agreement, the Ghanaian government has no authority over U.S. Ins and outs, U.S. military coming in and out inside their own country.
And there's one thing that I think we have to learn as we keep on talking, maybe open up people's minds. Any the first thing that a real country should be looking at, any government that signs any deal, be it economic, financial, or resource type of deal, they should imply in that constitution that the next government that comes has to review those things and renegotiate those terms. We cannot have situations in our countries in Africa where institutions, resources are mortgaged for 100 years, signed by one president in his term.
A president that was selected.
Yes, who was selected. You subject your country to 100 years of exploitation of a particular resources. And we think that is normal. It's not business, it's not business as normal as usual. All those type of long-term contribute. Any country that any government comes in, that's what will happen in Sweden and Amazonia. Any government that signs any deal knows that the deal ends within that period of time or needs renegotiation to tier. They put it in various tiers. You need renegotiation for the next government that comes in and see whether it is beneficial to the people or not. If it is not, they do a review and renegotiate the deal. If it's not beneficial to our people, then we have to renegotiate or we cancel it.
Exactly, and that's something similar that Trump did when Trump came to power. He renegotiated NAFTA, which is which governs them. Renegotiated he canceled the agreement that the Obama administration had with Iran. He came out of it, and I mean many other agreements that are including those that they had with other both bilateral and multilateral organization came out of it or renegotiated them. Yeah.
If it's not good, particularly on the economic front, if it is not good and resource management, if it is not good for your country, the next president that comes in, the first thing is to really look at it and do a review and go in for renegotiation. That is how we are supposed to structure our nation. Not that countries will come and they'll mortgage a particular resource for 99 years. 99 years of exploitation. Even so, about critical assets. Don't give it out like port, seaport, airport for so and so years of exploitation before they turn it back over to you. And then we sign and say that structural adjustment plan. Those are the things that we are not going to stand and take. Well, comrade, I know very well that you have taken a lot of your time.
Oh, no worries.
Let's touch one last thing and then we go. One victory that we got as Africans. Zimbabwe, we heard recently that Zimbabwe they had lifted the sanctions from Zimbabwe. What crosses your mind and what is your thought process behind that? And what is the trigger that might have resulted to that?
I think that one of the things that I think that there are many reasons, including some of which maybe you can bring up as well. But they had all these sanctions on Zimbabwe that was killing the Zimbabwean economy. Zimbabwe had recently discovered a lot of gold too in their country. So at one point, the inflation was off the roof in Zimbabwe. They were using these Zimbabwean dollars. Zimbabwe went on to switch its currency and created a new currency that had, I forget the name of the new currency, but this currency was,
They call it Zim.
okay. And this currency is now backed by gold. And the value of this currency is now even stronger than the US dollars. And if you notice, the BRICS are moving towards a situation where, with the creation of their currency, they are looking towards pegging that currency towards a basket of currencies, but it is more likely that they might peg it back into the historical gold, because a lot of these countries are buying gold like nothing else. Like, I mean, China has been buying off gold, Russia buying gold, and the value of gold or gold prices have now risen significantly.
Not cutting you short. That's why you see those AES states, they are building gold refineries in their countries to mine and process gold. There is a reason.
Imagine
Mali is building a gold refinery. Burkina Faso is building a gold refinery with the intention of not exporting raw gold out there. They'll be processing the gold in their country.
Imagine that them now process all their gold and then keep it and then create their currency that is backed by that gold. That would be, I mean, people like this Malema has spoken about the fact that if just by bringing Zimbabwe, there's a mineral that is mostly like I think it's about 85% of them is located between Zimbabwe and South Africa. That he talks about the fact that, just imagine, just like oil, if the two countries got together and set the price of that particular mineral between them and use their currency to use those minerals to back their currency, just imagine the difference that would make to other world currencies. So the whole policy of lifting up some of those sanctions with on Zimbabwe was sometimes, when you put just what the French were doing, putting their knees on the necks of African states to the extent that they got to a point where they just couldn't breathe anymore. So by removing some of that pressure, therefore gives Zimbabwe some of the breathing space to not push towards joining the BRICS and the potential support that would bring to the BRICS organization. So I think that was one of the bigger of the deals, the push towards removing some of those sanctions, because otherwise, why do they still have sanctions on Cuba? Why do they still have embargoes on even Haiti? Haiti is still, even as poor as Haiti is, there is still a U.S. embargo on Haiti or Haiti and on Cuba. As I mean, part of what Cuba is now suffering a significant hunger crisis, driven by the fact that of the embargo that the U.S. has had on Cuba. So I think that a lot of it is driven by that, but there may be other reasons that I'm really not aware of that you can maybe expatiate on.
Yeah, I look at from this perspective of the fact that I think Zimbabwe has a lot of resources, particularly lithium. One of the biggest deposits of lithium in Africa is in Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, that's correct.
That is, and they also have, I think, if it's not cobalt, they have lithium, cobalt, and one other critical mineral. And you sanctioning them, there's already a market towards the BRICS economy.
Especially China, yes.
Yes. So you are sanctioning them has technically no impact. And as they continue to weaken the aspect of sanctions and they continue to stress as the issue of intercontinental free trade keeps on growing stronger, the purpose of your sanction will mean nothing, because the effective implementation of intercontinental free trade means that other countries can still do business without tariffs with Zimbabwe. It could succeed very well if you have silos, isolated nations that when they hit you, the other countries are scared of, dealing with you. Secondly, Zimbabwe swaying a lot towards the east and the BRICS. The sanctions that you put was meant to see how you can take back the farms and give it to the white owners who came and the white settlers who came and stole the land from the people, made billions and trillions of it. The people took them back. Now you are putting sanctions on them to take the land and give them back. So that is a no-no. It's never going to happen. You have the name of being the person that is going around sanctioning other nations, and the impact, the mid to long-term effect of the impact of their sanctions will not have any effect anymore. What do? Lift it up to show that you are in good faith with it. Try to figure out how you can renegotiate resource and economic deals with Zimbabwe. Because by you doing that means you're not trading with Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe has other channels to trade its resources with. And you are losing. And then another aspect, South Africa was your lab or your friend or your counterpart down there. South Africa has totally kicked against your attitude towards the world through Israel and what you are doing. So you losing South Africa, Zimbabwe was the next strongest ally, and you losing Zimbabwe, then you have basically no influence in that area. Influence is dying out. Those are the two strongest countries. So the tendency of removing those sanctions is either to play this game, play the game of being close to Zimbabwe, to use Zimbabwe to undermine South Africa. That's another angle that I see it. You want to release these things and later on make friends with Zimbabwe, but to try to undermine South Africa. Mind you, that when one of the things that led Thabo Mbeki, forced Thabo Mbeki to resign, was because Britain and the US were trying to use South Africa as a staging ground to invade Zimbabwe and take out Mugabe. Thabo Mbeki said it's not going to happen under his watch, and they forced him to make some concession and resign. Even though this man, the other guy came, he didn't give that opportunity. There's that bond and that camaraderie between the two countries. And just around the southern zone before the Sadek region, there is something that I noticed. Whenever the issue of land, taking back land without compensation, comes up, I've done the math, I've done the study. Whenever that issue comes up, xenophobia against other Africans come up also.
Happens, right?
Yes.
Right.
The past 3 times where I've had xenophobia is when Malema smacks the game that we want our land without any competition. That is the moment that xenophobia comes back and picks up. And against Africans, somebody is muddying the water.
Yeah, I mean, like the CIA is everywhere. Like what do they call this lady who was a representative of the CIA in Ukraine that fermented? I'm sorry?
Nuland.
Yeah, Luland. That's her. Yes, exactly. So they're everywhere. Every country has a group of them that will cement such
stir up confusion, put in money, direct the effort to attack your fellow brothers to divert the attention away from land. You get it? Look at it. The 3 moments that they had serious xenophobia in South Africa has always been when the issue of land
came up.
Yes. That's when you always hear xenophobia. Look at it. Go and do your research to say, I have done it and I've seen it. So we have to be very careful. Who are the usual suspects that triggers that? That's xenophobia attack on blacks. Follow the money. Who are the ones sponsoring the attack of causing the xenophobia attack? Follow the money. It is a game, and we have to be smart to see it. Wait again in the future, when the pressure mount again about land redistribution without compensation, you will see it will come up again.
See, Malema has said it. The EFF has been slowly gaining momentum in South Africa, and they are now like I think they're now the third largest party after they call this other party
DA.
Yeah, DA. Yes, after the DA. But they've said it, when they take over the government, they will do exactly that's what their charter says.
It's not negotiable.
They're not. They're gonna take the land without compensation, and
it's not negotiable. It's their land.
It's not negotiable. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, they have Malema has said at one point that there was a road network that was being built, and they asked the owners of the land where the road was going to traverse to bring in the land title and get compensated for. Obviously, they're building a highway. Nobody showed up, which meant that they don't even have titles to the place.
Yeah.
Right.
And they own it.
Yeah, and comrade, as you were speaking, something came to my mind which I think made sense too, because China has become one of the biggest exporters and manufacturers and then exporters of EV vehicles. So, and they use lithium to make this battery. Their batteries can go how many thousand miles without needing any charging. And so, as you were talking about, it came to my mind too that may have had something to do with it, because basically they surpassed the US in vehicles exports and sales in the world. They are now the biggest in sales volume, not just in all other vehicles, but equal also in EV vehicles, environmentally friendly vehicles,
and high quality.
And those run on batteries that are lithium driven. So now I think there might also be a connection to that with those sanctions, China will still be able to receive lithium from Zimbabwe. With sanctions, without sanctions, perhaps there might have been the consideration that Zimbabwe can now ship some of those. They can use Zimbabwe towards going after China in terms of slowing down that growth.
Yeah.
So there is also that dynamic that I thought I mentioned.
Yeah. So when we hear things happening, there's something at the background. We know you and I, we always try as much as possible to put context in some of these things to educate our people, because the revolution, we as Ambazonia, we are not a silo. The world is revolving, the world is moving. So at times when things are happening, we take our time off to even try to even put some context in some of these things and discuss with our people, and so that some become educated or have a deeper understanding. Some of the things that we see might be eye-opener to some people that will listen to it and they start researching more on it. An educated society, you cannot fool an educated society. The only way they have succeeded in fooling our society is miseducating us. But if you are properly educated and do your own research, you hardly be fooled. Be kicked around. So that's the type of ambassador we're trying to bring up, where we open up people's minds, start thinking and looking at things with a different perspective, being truthful to ourselves, be unapologetic, and create a nation where people will be free to express themselves and know that we are interconnected globally. This thing that they have cut us as a little piece of nation, then being manipulated from somewhere. No, Ambassador will be in a state where we will be dynamic in geopolitics. The entire society will create the tools and necessary assets for our society to be totally dynamic as far as geopolitics is concerned. Because whatever is happening anywhere will affect our nation. So we'll make sure that we try as much as possible to continue to tell our people what is happening out of the normal revolution, what is happening out there, try to give our analysis on things that are happening in the continent and in the world. And, people can pick from it, learn from it, research from it, And that's what you and I try as much as possible to do. Comrade, I really want to appreciate your time, effort in doing research and educating our people in whatever we pick up, the topics that we pick up and discuss with our people. We will continue to do this time and again till we really normalize and standardize the particular time. But we'll try as much as possible to continue to educate our people on the happenings of the war. Besides that, we try to bring context into our own revolution, what is happening, and try to bring context. Our people should continue to contribute. We will never feel ourselves we don't have the resources. We need the money. We need money. People go around undermining the liberation tax. Those who go around trying to throw shade on it or smear it. The question I want to ask them, I ask Ambazonians, how do we expect to free ourselves if we prepare to invest in our own freedom?
That's right.
Yeah, when you invest in your freedom, you own a part of that freedom and a part of that land, and you cherish it forever. We're in a position where I think even if they come to give us money to fight this battle, where we don't have our own sacrifices to make, the freedom will not be fulfilling and long-lasting. As we do it on our own, innovate, tools and means of raising funds to fight the enemy, at the end of the day, we'll own our independence by ourselves. Comrade, I really want to thank you. If you have a last word, just give last word and then close the topic of discussion for today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I would just reiterate, especially use this opportunity on your platform and those that may be watching this on ACN to reach out to all Ambazonians or all individuals that are of Ambazonian extraction, just like the logistics chief did say earlier on. The success of our revolution is dependent on us. There is no benevolence in international politics. It's all a game of interest. If you look at previously the way that the US had come out and talked about the support that they had for Ukraine, that it was unending, they would stand with Ukraine all the way to the end. Now the Congress cannot even pass a simple legislation to continue to provide that because that support, because the situation on the ground has shifted to the extent that any amount of money that they send to Ukraine will make no difference. So in order for us to be able to shift that situation on the ground, those Ambazonians that are located, especially in the diaspora, you have to recognize, like I said, there is no benevolence in geopolitics, in international politics. It's all a game of interest. Look at the way that the war going on with Israel and Gaza, how it's exposed some of these, what we call rule-based order in terms of, we have always thought that when you did this, then this would be what would happen. But it looks like the gloves have been off because it had to do with, in this case, the people that are making the laws are breaking every one of them. So that goes to show you that there really isn't any rule-based order. This is dependent on us. So the statement that I'm trying to get at is the fact that we are going to have to, if we want a country that we call our own, if we want a state that we can retire and rest at, if we want a place where our children can grow and be successful, if we want a place that we can call home, it will be for us to invest in that place. Look at how other countries are doing, like we talked about the AES region, how they're looking after their country. We've got to look after our own country as we move forward. We've got to look after our people. We've got to take the actions that bring this struggle to a close, that make it short-lived. That means, therefore, that the egg of sea standing needs your support, and in which case we have different mediums in which we have the TTOF, we have the liberation tax, we have the monthly contribution and a monthly fundraiser that is done, and many other mediums. You don't have to wait to use these mediums. There are individuals that you can reach out to if this message is reaching to you, so that we can bring this to a close. Cameroon is not in a position that, if you bring to Cameroon, is not in a position that they can continue to sustain this. War is not cheap. They're not in the position, both economically and even in military strength. Otherwise, this would have been over. The fact that we continue with no support, zero support from outside sources to stand strong and face them means, therefore, that if we had the resources, imagine that if we had just a little bit more of the resources that are needed, this would be over in a very short space of time. It is for that reason that we are calling, or we are using this opportunity to call upon you to do your own share and meet up with those obligations, so that way the Ambazonian Defense Forces, the Ambazonian Governing Council can bring this to a close. And on that basis, comrade, thank you very much once again, for giving me this opportunity to be on this platform.
Comrade, thank you very much. Just one last thing that we have to transmit to Ambazonians. One, a police cord. To Ambazonians, even Burkina Faso, people are contributing to defense of their homeland. You know, there's a fund, comrade, you know, there's a fund that Burkina Faso people are contributing for defense of homeland. Everybody in the country is contributing. That's what some people don't understand. They think that contributing to the Burkina Faso, honestly, they have a fund, a fund drive. I think they just either they deduct it from people's salaries or put a contribution in one way or the other for defense of their homeland. So when we bring up the idea of liberation tax, and I ask myself, people are shitting on it. What else do they have? War is not cheap. What else do we have to free our land if they are not the enemies who are condemning or attacking it? And I see draw inference. Burkina Faso, they are contributing money. Citizens are contributing money to defend motherland. They are putting money for resources and everything to protect their country and to grant security to their country. Let the Amazonians hear this. And the ones that have always been attacking us, attacking the Gulf Sea, let them hear this and know that it is not something that is extraordinary from us. A country that is fighting for its heart and soul, like Burkina Faso is doing it. So for us to ask and tell our people that we should contribute, it is not something that we are making it from somewhere. It works, and that's why it's been attacked the most. I will have to continue to forge a pathway to continue to appeal to our people to continue to pay the liberation tax. We will get there. Thanks very much, comrade. I really appreciate your time, your effort, and all what you do, the research that you do in trying to really ensure that you educate our people, and also make sure that you relate what is happening globally to our own quest for liberation. I really thank you very much, comrade, and I want to tell our audience that just stay tuned till next time. We'll keep on gathering information about global geopolitics and keep on updating Ambazonians. Thanks very much and have a good night.